I think initially, with some of these early studies, we see a lower proportion of people with measured antibodies than we were expecting, I think. And it indicates that a lower number of people are actually infected.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I would like to hear WHO's opinion regarding the recent study by the Stanford University. It hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, but it is based on antibody samples from some 3,000 people in California and suggests that the actual number of COVID-19 cases may be 50 to 85 times higher than the official figure. You previously said that we might be missing out some mild cases, but does WHO have any data or reason to believe that the actual number might be so much higher? And could it mean that we are on the track to get so-called herd immunity across the globe? Thank you very much.
So thank you for the question. So yes, we are aware of a paper that's been put in pre-publication. So this is on one of those online servers that some researchers put their papers on before they go through peer review. And it is a paper that looks at antibody levels in Santa Clara, California. So this study is one of many which has suggested that there's a proportion of the population who have antibodies to COVID-19. I'm not going to comment specifically on what percentage this study had, but what I can say is that a number of studies, which we are aware of, again, in pre-publication, we haven't seen the full details of all of these papers, have suggested that a small proportion of the population, a few percentage in the single digits, up to 14% in one study that we've seen in Germany, have antibodies to COVID-19. So that means that they have evidence of past infection. It doesn't mean active infection. It means that they had infection at one point in time.
We realize that the number of infected people is somewhere between 50 and 85 times more compared to what we thought, compared to what had been documented. Immediately, that means that the infection fatality rate, the chance of dying, the probability of dying if you are infected, diminishes by 50 to 85-fold because the denominator in the calculation becomes 50 to 85-fold bigger. If you take these numbers into account, they suggest that the infection fatality rate for this new coronavirus is likely to be in the same ballpark as seasonal influenza. Of course, there is still a little bit of uncertainty about the exact number, but it's clearly very different compared to the original thoughts or speculations or preliminary data that suggested a much, much higher infection fatality rate.
I think initially, with some of these early studies, we see a lower proportion of people with measured antibodies than we were expecting, I think. And it indicates that a lower number of people are actually infected.
We realize that the number of infected people is somewhere between 50 and 85 times more compared to what we thought.